What's up, everybody? Paul here from Hoops Crew, and it is time to react to the Geelong and Adelaide Round 5 Gather Round 2025 matchup, where the Cats got up to the tune of 19 points. It's nice to have finally been able to watch this game because, as some of you may be aware, I was in the Grampians for a few days, and trying to watch that thing was nearly impossible. I was basically working on dial-up internet. For any of you youngsters out there, remember the creak and cracking for the internet you may have heard your parents talk about? Yeah, I was basically dealing with that sort of internet. Good times. So I've been drip-fed the football over the course of the last few days. I've missed all of the awesome things like post-game live, and I'm finally up to date, have watched the game, and I'm here to talk about it in detail. So let's get into it. And as I said, the Cats got the job done to the tune of 19 points. The Crows, 15-10-100, went down to the Cats, 18-11-119. More scoring shots from the Cats, but very much the old game of two halves sort of thing. Very reflective here of a Geelong Football Club who understood what was going on in the game, or a coaching team that really understood what was going on in the game and flicked the switch perfectly in the second half. You can see Adelaide, especially in the second quarter, really started to get away. They led by as much as 30 points at one point when Ben Keezer kicked his third, and things were looking a little bit dire. Now, there was this great little flurry of goals at the end of the second quarter there that brought the game back to within 2 goals. That certainly helped. But really, it was what Geelong did in the second half that was most impressive. And there's quite a few, I think, really important facets to this game to discuss. We're going to go through all of that. I really want to talk about how predictable this was at the end of the day. Certainly a scoreline like this at the end of the day as well. I've spoken a lot, and I feel very much vindicated here in front of our Hoops Crew audience and anyone else who might happen to be watching in my concerns about Adelaide all year, where they will score heavily, but they can't defend. And now you've heard Nick's talk about it in his press conference. You see the media catching onto it. Sorry, guys, I've been saying it for weeks. They are playing 2015, 2016 Adelaide, where they score heavily, and they've got this amazing 3-pronged tall forward line with Tilthorpe, Walker, and, of course, Fogarty, very akin to what they had back in the 2015-16 period, where they had Jenkins, Walker, and what's his name? Tom Lynch. Very similar to that sort of era where they've got all these amazing tall forwards. They even had Eddie Betts on the small front. Like they're very well equipped. And the Adelaide forward line of today is very, very similar to that. But they don't have the defensive capabilities. And not that they don't have the right lineup, but they don't have the strategy in place to be able to make it all work across the full 4 quarters and minimize the offensive capabilities of an opponent. They've got to work on that. But we're going to talk about all of these things after a word from our sponsor.
The Hoops Crew Media Network is proudly sponsored by Cyril Cook Florist. Visit them at shop 1211 Leather Street in Breakwater. Phone them on 035 222 2244 or visit their website at www.cyrilcookflorist.com.au and use the offer code GOCATS in the voucher field at checkout to get 20% off your next online purchase.
Thank you, Cyril Cook Florist, as always, for your ongoing support of the Hoops Crew and all we get up to. Now, we're starting here by looking at some of the team stats and what picture that paints. And honestly, if we look at this as Geelong supporters, this is a pretty familiar story. And keep in mind, we're a team that has won overwhelmingly more than we've lost over the last few years, but we continue to lose in terms of sheer disposals. It's the efficiency of the Cats. It's the way they slice through the forward line. That has been our greatest strength for a long, long time, not winning the ball more than our opponent. So you can see disposals down, kicks basically the same, handballs down, our inside 50s, and that's where my point is highlighted. We do far more when we've got the ball in hand. 59-52 in that regard, and here we go. Here's our disposal efficiency. Slightly higher, admittedly, not significantly when it comes to the efficiency inside 50, but it is greater. Disposal efficiency, basically the same for both teams. We just managed to retain the ball, especially in the second half. We managed to retain it in our forward half of the ground, depriving their forwards of opportunity more than anything else. Free kick count, I was actually surprised that it was as close as it was. It felt like, and admittedly, that's probably the hooting and hollering from a very childish Adelaide crowd that was there on the night. It felt like we must have earned 20 more free kicks than what we've got there, but we didn't. So make of that what you will. What impressed me most, and I don't think the the hit-out count really highlights it as well as it should, is the importance of Reece Stanley in this contest. He absolutely had the measure of Riley O'Brien. And we spoke about this after his matchup against Max Gawn the other week, and how important it was going to be to try and back up. And for Reece, it's always been about momentum and continuing to build and keep that body in shape. And he's a confidence player. And as soon as he gets a bit of a run on, he keeps going. And he got his start against Max Gawn. He's delivered again here. I'll look at some of the individual numbers, and maybe there's something that maybe prompts me to rethink that. But the eye test, watching that game, I was super impressed with what Reece did, the way he contested and the way he got around the ground and stretched Riley O'Brien in terms of, I guess, Riley's lack of aerobic comparison to what Reece has. So you can see 29 hit-outs to 50, but then the clearance numbers, and we tend to lose clearance. This goes back to the conversation we had last week about the way the Cats are using Danger. Send him into the center bounce, win, lose, or draw. Then he pushes forward. Someone else fills the void, and off you go. Because obviously Danger in the middle there, greater chance of winning the contested ball, greater chance of winning the clearances. He would do that more often than not. In the end, we broke even in the center clearances and won as per usual in the stoppage clearance game. Fantastic to see, and I think it's showing that there's some method to this thing with Danger that's working very well, because not only did he do all of that through the middle, but he also went forward and kicked 4 goals on the night. He was fantastic. Possession, obviously, again, fairly similar to what we're talking about for disposals here. I'm surprised, actually, that we turned the ball over more, but I think that's probably going to be heavily skewed by our first half, where we butchered the ball on a few occasions. And really handed it back over to Adelaide in some pretty awful positions. But I don't have the means to see a quarter by quarter or a half by half split of that particular stat. So we'll leave it at that for now. For me, very clear that clearly skewed by the first half of football. Don't really care too much about possession. We know kind of how that went. Marks, look, Adelaide, to their great credit, deprived Geelong of the uncontested marking game that we had last week, where we got 160 of them. We've halved that. But again, it's the way we played the ground ball game really well. And this is the great strength of Geelong, is that we are so adaptable as a club. Now, sometimes it takes us too long to flick the switch and recognize what game we need to play against an opponent. But we can play tall, we can play small, we can play a very aerial game, we can play a very ground ball based game. And we can do all of those things really, really well. And Geelong recognised, probably halfway through the second quarter, exactly how they need to change the game. They executed that and delivered from that point onwards. Marks inside 50, bit skewed because Adelaide's talls did such a phenomenal job, but pretty reasonable effort from the Cats going forward as well. Contested marks 8-6 in favour of the Cats. Scoring, we know the story there. Of course, the time in front, Adelaide led the game for the majority of it. The Cats getting really on top in the last quarter in particular. Tackles, great. The defensive pressure was awesome. Tackles inside 50, again, one of our greatest strengths is the way we lock the ball down inside of our forward 50, and if it comes out, it goes straight back in again. We did a fantastic job in that regard, but both teams well down on season averages. It wasn't that kind of game for the most part. And the rest of it is relatively unimportant at this point. So I think, what I think most of us saw in terms of the game, either at the ground or on our TVs or through our iPhones, as I had to do in my case, I think really kind of is reflected in the stats here. This is a game that kind of highlights the two halves, highlights, I think, the importance of that Geelong midfield and what we've been doing, and disposal efficiency, just how important it is in this game. Let's move on to some individual player figures. Now, I will take a moment to look at the Riley O'Brien and Stanley matchup. And again, there's Stanley. Didn't win the hitouts, but really kind of cleaned up around the ground. Did a fantastic job. More clearances, more marks. Hands on the ball. More than double. I think a comprehensive win to Reece Stanley, despite not winning the actual hit-out game. I think a lot of Riley O'Brien's hit-outs were relatively ineffective for the most part. But then if we go beyond that and we look at some of our numbers, Bailey Smith and Max Holmes leading all comers when it comes to disposals. Tom Atkins, again, doing a phenomenal job. And when the rest of the team was struggling, it was Tom Atkins who just kept pushing through the contest. Of course, we've been talking a lot about his tackle figures lately. He was paired with Isaac Rankin, who did a pretty damn good job, to be fair. But what I think was most important, his tackle numbers are down, but the way he kind of positioned himself blunted Isaac Rankin to an extent. I would say Isaac Rankin perhaps won the contest in some facets, but then Tom Atkins won in others. And I think that's really highlighted here through the clearance game, where Tom Atkins is not necessarily the clearance beast typically, but he's more tackle, defensive pressure, those sorts of things. But he really led from the front, especially in those parts of the game where we were struggling in that first half of the second quarter. He was integral in keeping us in the match. But again, you can see, and it's reflected in those overall numbers, not a lot of possession. We don't play a high possession game, certainly on an individual level. Bailey Smith and Max Holmes being the exceptions in this case. Grind and Ollie Dempsey doing a great job. Lawson Humphrey's fantastic. Zach Guthrie just doing what he needed to do. As you can see, the marking numbers across the board aren't super high in this game, both of the contested and uncontested varieties. And that's reflected in the overall figures here, where we don't have a lot of defenders really clogging up the top end. Of course, we're seeing your Mark Keanes and your Rory Lairds, Mark O'Connor's there, but we're not seeing these mid-teen figures that we've kind of seen in Geelong games of late. Flicking back over to our disposals, just to continue to sort things that way. Mentioned Zach Guthrie. Jack Bowes a really solid performance as well. He's really continuing to build into that season quite nicely. Paddy Dangerfield for me, best on field, not just because of the 4 goals, but a lot of those 1%ers, those really immeasurable things, the way he just destroyed contests, piled through, but also, took the weight on his shoulders and did what a captain needs to do at various different stages of the game. Those sorts of things are immeasurable. And, you could see it in the celebration. He's usually just a quick point and that's about it. But you could really see the emotion in him over the course of the night. And even that thing is not going to get you a stat. But when you see your captain leading from the front like that and really getting bullish about, no, we're winning this thing, I'm going to drag you guys with me if I have to, that lifts everyone. And it was, you start to see it reflected in your Jeremy Camerons and the like, who really picked up through the second half. Jeremy Cameron with 4 goals, the majority of which came in the second half, as well as just, possession for Jeremy Cameron. He's pretty quiet up to that point. There's been some conversation that some words might have been had between him and the coach's box during the late second quarter, early third, or at halftime. But I think a lot of it's also just being inspired by your captain. And he was fantastic. Sam de Koning doing an incredible job as well. Really, and this is the same sort of conversation we had last week, there's the team effort tag that we can throw on this. There's not really any weak players. Mitch Nevitt, some people say, and I've seen a comment out there, how does this guy continue to get a place? His physicality was huge. He was absolutely phenomenal in that space. He's not and obviously, I say 1 tackle. They're not amazing numbers. He's not spending ridiculous amounts of time in the guts doing, and I might try and make sure that we bring up the time on ground. Is that the last column? It's kind of cut off. It is the time on ground. Mitch Nevitt, 66%. Like, you can only do what you've got with the time you spend on the ground. And of that 66%, he's not going to be in the middle all of the time. And then you've got to be, there's a pecking order. You are behind Smith. You're behind Holmes. You're behind Atkins. You're behind Dangerfield when he goes there. There's a queue of guys who are further up the pecking order than he is. I'm really impressed with those numbers and the way he just, he feels really strong in the hips. When he gets tackled, he's not going down easily, or he's making sure to get his arms free and dispose of the ball. He's been really, really important in that regard. Now, I would like to see Mitch Nevitt, increase that game time another 10%. And obviously that's, again, pecking orders and those sorts of things. I would love to see that increase by another 10% or so. And I'd love to see him getting close, between 17 and 20 disposals a game at the moment, at this particular point in his development. But I think we are in a really good place with where he's at and where he's coming along. So to anyone who's talking shit about my man Mitch Nevitt, jam it. Ollie Henry, not necessarily the most potent game, certainly in terms of hitting the scoreboard. But again, there were some really handy taps onto other players in better positions and effective handballs, and the way he would just kind of bash his way through a contest at high speed, get the ball and dispose of it or knock it onto someone else. Again, some of these things are things that can't be measured, but I think he was really important there. And that was good for him after having a few quiet weeks as well. O'Shea Mullen was solid, but maybe a little bit of a return to ground for him. He did also have some injury troubles and was the player that was subbed in the end. Mark Blitzar's really solid in defence. Did everything he could there against some pretty potent forwards there with Tex, with Fogarty and Tilthorpe. Tyson Stengel also just a kind of quiet season for Tyson so far, but you could see he was struggling a little bit with cramps and those sort of things late in the piece. I wonder if he doesn't need a week off, just to have a bit of a break. I don't think it's going to come, though, with the game against Hawthorn. He might thrive in that sort of environment. Shannon Neal continues to just gradually get there and develop. I would say he was probably our weakest player on the night, but he didn't lose too many contests either. I think he just got himself into some less than ideal positions. And I think there's a little bit of a learning thing for him where he would have been going into this season assuming, okay, there's Jeremy Cameron as top dog, and then there's me coming out of the goal square as the big full forward. But now Danger's gone down there, and I think that's kind of thrown him for a bit of a loop, and I think they're still trying to work out what this blend needs to look like, but we'll get there in time. Ted Closey came on late, obviously, as the sub, but also pretty handy with 5 disposals in pretty short time, and of course, throwing that weight around. He did a great job in that regard. And so that is your look at Geelong and Adelaide, where the Cats got the job done to the tune of 19 points. Thank you, everyone, for having tuned into this one. Thank you all for having checked out Ben's post-game live the other night, which has been huge. The number of people who've watched that engaged with that participated in that has been amazing. I'll take a little bit of credit with the amazing show that we had the week before. It's just really set the tone. But thanks all of you for coming along and checking that out, and all the other content that that have been posted this week. I've had a few where I've had to record and then bank those things because of my absence. But it was great to see the number of people who jumped on all of my videos about AFL 26. Obviously, there's the video about Zach Butters and whether he can or cannot become a cat. There's more conversations that I want to have about more of these kinds of topics, and I'm going to continue to do so with you. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. Hit that button down below. Smash the like button. Let the algorithm put more of our content in your feed. If you want to have good, honest conversations about both Geelong and the broader game of AFL, we are looking forward to having those with you. If you haven't already, make sure to smash those buttons. Check out our Patreon as well. You can subscribe for 7 days. It's a free trial. You can get early access to content. There's exclusive content and extended content. Check all of that out on the Patreon as well. You can find me at Paul James Games on socials. And until next time, good win by the Cats. It's really good to go into state and get a win, especially in a big round like Gather Round. Awesome stuff. Thank you, everyone, for having cheered on as loudly as you have from the sidelines. Remain Geelong strong, and I'll see you later.